No one knows exactly when the Forbidden Sky burial realm first appeared. People only know that when seen from above, it resembles a colossal graveyard of gods. Jagged mountain ranges rise in unnatural shapes, a sword plunged deep into the earth, a battle axe half-buried black stone blades thrusting straight toward the somber sky. When Diepthun came to a stop, his gaze did not take in the landscape the way the two martial emperors behind him did. He looked at it like someone reading the memories of an age-long past. "These aren't mountains," he said quietly. Qin Fong frowned. Liat Hoa let out a cold, dismissive chuckle. Diepthun slowly turned back, his eyes dark and fathomless as an abyss. "This is the remnant of a battle beyond the martial emperor realm. And whatever lies buried beneath that stone may still be alive." The wind suddenly shrieked through the mountain crevices. The ground trembled faintly like the heartbeat of something ancient that had just been stirred awake. At the center of the valley stood a mountain shaped like a palace, silent and imposing, as if waiting for someone to open doors that had been sealed for 10,000 years. None of the three realized that from that very moment they had stepped into a story that did not belong to their own era. Diepthun's words caused the air within the Forbidden Sky burial realm to grow heavy as lead. Qin Fong immediately released his divine sense, spreading it across the entire valley. The space here was distorted by an invisible force, spiritual energy, flowing sluggishly, as if bound in chains. This was no natural phenomenon. It was a grand sealing array, and it was still operating. A seal spanning tens of thousands of miles. Existing for at least 10,000 years, Qin Fong said in a low voice. No one in this era has the ability to construct something like this. Liat Hoa remained silent. If power beyond the martial emperor realm had truly once existed, then was the limit of martial cultivation they had pursued their entire lives merely a shallow threshold. Diepthun stepped forward a few paces, his gaze settling on the palace mountain at the center of the valley. Its structure was far too complete to be nature's creation. The sharp lines and defined contours suggested it had once been a magnificent structure, now petrified by some terrifying force. "There are two possibilities," he said slowly. "Either this place once imprisoned something, or it was protecting something even more dreadful." The wind fell still. The issue was no longer about exploring ancient ruins. The real question was, if the seal was still active, then whatever lay inside, was it truly dead, or merely asleep? The silence lasted only a few breaths, yet it was enough for all three to understand that none of them intended to turn back. "Since we're already here, I want the truth," Liat Hoa said coldly. A dark crimson flame flickered around her wrist, a silent declaration. Qin Fong studied Diepthun for a long moment before suddenly forming a hand seal. A golden sigil shot forward and imprinted itself onto Diepthun's chest. "Just a tracking mark," he said flatly. "Don't even think about trying anything." Diepthun gave a faint smile. "I intend to live longer than either of you." The three of them advanced toward the palace mountain at the center of the valley. When Qin Fong slashed across the stone surface with a blade of qi, the outer shell split apart like a dried husk torn open. Beneath it was not solid rock, but a staircase descending into darkness. A wave of stale air poured out, carrying the scent of time long decayed. They stepped inside. Under the firelight, Liat Hoa conjured shadows gradually took shape, bodies kneeling along both sides of the staircase, hands locked in seals, heads bowed low, as if paying homage to an unseen deity. Dried blood had stained the stone black. Diepthun stopped. "This wasn't a sacrifice," he said softly. "It was a prayer ritual." And thus their journey in search of the truth had officially begun. The stone steps stretched downward into the depths of the palace like a path leading into the belly of some colossal creature. The air was thick, cold, laden with the sense that something was waiting. Diepthun had barely finished speaking of a prayer ritual when a faint sound echoed through the hall. Drip. A drop of green liquid fell onto the stone floor at the center of the grand chamber. Liat Hoa raised her flame higher. On the darkened ceiling, a massive cocoon clung tightly to the stone, its surface melting layer by layer like heated wax. At the same time, the spiritual energy outside suddenly surged inward like an invisible torrent. Wind shrieked through the corridors, scattering the ashes of the long-decayed corpses. "The seal is being activated, or it's breaking," Qin Fong growled through clenched teeth. A sharp cracking sound rang out. The cocoon split open. Tens of thousands of tiny creatures with metallic carapaces poured down like a rain of black steel. Their wings vibrated, producing a piercing shriek that seemed to tear at the fabric of space itself. Liat Hoa took half a step back, her eyes flickering with unmistakable unease for the first time. Diepthun lifted his gaze toward the now empty ceiling where the cocoon had once hung. "We're not the first to open this door," he whispered. "We're only late to something that's already awakening." The swarm of metallic creatures descended like a black tidal wave. Qin Fong reacted instantly, slashing his arm outward. Blade Qi erupted and formed a barrier around the three of them. The first impact rang out like hail striking iron. Thousands, tens of thousands of relentless blows hammered against the shield, making it tremble violently. "They're devouring spiritual energy," Qin Fong roared. His face paled as he felt his Emperor Qi draining at a terrifying speed. Liat Hoa clenched her teeth and brought her hands together. Dark crimson flames exploded outward, sweeping across the grand hall. Countless insect-like creatures fell, scorched and crackling, but their numbers barely seemed to diminish. The stench of burning chitin mixed with molten metal, thickening the air into something suffocating. Then a deep, heavy sound echoed from the depths of the hall. The swarm abruptly parted, forced back, as if by an invisible pressure. From the darkness, a colossal figure slowly crawled forward. Its black armor gleamed like forged steel blades, protruding in jagged clusters around its head, reflecting the crimson firelight. It opened its mouth. A vortex of spiritual energy formed, dragging the smaller insects back into it, along with the remnants of spiritual power from the weakening barrier. Qin Fong tightened his grip on his blade. Liat Hoa forgot to breathe. The crisis was no longer about numbers. The crisis was the being standing before them, and it hadn't even made its move yet. No signal was needed. Qin Fong and Liat Hoa moved at the same instant. Blade light tore through the air, carrying the full force of Emperor Qi accumulated over decades of cultivation. At the same time, Liat Hoa's infernal flames erupted violently, the heat so intense that the stone beneath their feet began to fracture. Two martial emperor powers merged into one devastating strike, slamming straight into the colossal body. Boom! The grand hall trembled. Sections of the stone ceiling collapsed in heavy slabs. When the dust and smoke finally cleared, the creature was still standing. Not a single scorch mark. Not a single cut. Instead, the armor across its body began to shift, emitting a chilling metallic sound as if countless blades were locking into place. Its massive frame contracted, elongated, twisted, gradually reshaping into a gigantic curved saber, its edge gleaming like cold moonlight. That's impossible. Liat Hoa staggered back. The living blade suddenly shot forward. Qin Fong raised his saber to block. The two arcs of blade chi collided, but in the next instant he was blasted backward, his body smashing into the stone wall as blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Diep Thun stood frozen, his ocular technique activated, piercing through the vibrating layers of armor. His voice was hoarse. It's not a demonic beast. It's a profound artifact. In that moment, all three of them understood. What they were facing did not belong to the laws of living beings. A profound artifact shouldn't possess complete sentience. Qin Fong pushed himself up with his saber, his voice hoarse. But Diep Thun wasn't looking at the living blade hovering mid-air. His gaze was fixed on the faint runes carved deep into the stone floor of the grand hall, the remnants of the prayer ritual they had seen upon entering. It wasn't born on its own, Diep Thun said quickly, his eyes blazing. It was nurtured by that ritual. The living saber vibrated again, as spiritual energy from every corner of the palace continued to pour into it. Each surge of gathered energy caused the metallic veins along its body to glow brighter. Liat Hoa suddenly understood. The outer seal, it's feeding its spiritual energy. Yes. Diep Thun nodded sharply. The seal wasn't just meant to imprison something. It's sustaining this. That was the true horror. They hadn't accidentally awakened a monster. The monster had been sleeping, waiting until it absorbed enough spiritual energy. Diep Thun looked up at the fractured dome, where spiritual energy spiraled downward in a visible current. It's not complete yet. If we sever the flow of spiritual energy, it will weaken. In a moment that had seemed like absolute despair, hope flickered, fragile but undeniable. The problem was, who would have enough time and enough strength to reach the array core before the living blade completed its awakening? Hold it off for 10 breaths, Diep Thun shouted. No further words were needed. Liat Hoa and Qin Fong charged forward. Infernal hellfire erupted into a sea of dark crimson flames, locking down the space around the living blade. Qin Fong poured every last trace of Emperor Qi into his attacks. Each slash wasn't meant to destroy, it was meant to force it back. The living saber shrieked, metallic reverberations shaking the grand hall. Every swing of its edge split the air as though space itself were being cleaved in two. Liat Hoa was blasted away, blood staining the hem of her robe. Qin Fong dropped to one knee, his trembling hand still gripping his saber. Behind them, Diep Thun sprinted toward the array core at the center of the hall, where ancient runes spiraled, funneling spiritual energy inward. He pressed his palm against the stone floor. You survived because of the seal. Then I'll break the seal. The runes flared. Spiritual energy erupted into chaos. The living saber suddenly faltered, its form warping as if its foundation had been ripped away. A thunderous explosion roared through the palace. Light swallowed the entire grand hall. When the dust finally settled, the forbidden sky burial realm was deathly silent. But massive cracks had spread across the land. The seal had weakened. And deeper below, something seemed to have just stirred. Do you think they've truly ended it? If you want to discover what lies beneath the final layer of the seal, comment 1.